Hello and welcome to another episode of the Growing Happy Babies podcast, your birth village in your pocket. I'm Adina, board-certified lactation consultant and fellow mom. In this podcast, we'll chat with doulas, midwives, lactation consultants, therapists, pelvic floor physios, and so many more birth helpers in the English-speaking Israeli community. Listen in to help you decide who you want to work with throughout your birth and baby journey. Let's grow some happy babies and happy families together. Most moms plan to breastfeed, but 3 out of 4 of them run into challenges. So many of us have grown into motherhood without ever seeing another woman breastfeed. That's why I created the Pocket Prenatal, a hands-on virtual prenatal breastfeeding preparation class with live monthly meetings where we literally put breastfeeding skills into practice before your baby arrives. What's normal newborn behavior? How do you know your baby is eating and growing well? Healing nipple pain, pumping, how to use bottles and pacifiers, postpartum mental health, and so much more. Join me for a comprehensive, judgment-free prenatal breastfeeding preparation at the Pocket Prenatal.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again. Today, we'll be talking with Ayelet Schwell. And although she has a background as a doula, she does something, uniquely tied to doula work and postpartum support, which is birth processing. And she's going to tell us more about that in like 2 seconds. So hi, Ayelet.
Hi, Adina. So excited to be here.
Can you take us through the story of how you got to this niche of birth support work?
Yeah. So my own third birth was, I would say, was a traumatic experience, the pregnancy through the birth, for me. And when I came out of that, I'm not going to go into the details of the birth. Thank God I've been through my own healing process for it. But after that birth and, recovering from my third birth, I just did not know if I could go back to doing birth work. And now he's 16. So this was many years ago. And I just felt like, can I trust myself? Can I be present for another woman with all the baggage that I'm carrying from my own bad decisions or whatever I was, wherever I was at in this like really unhealed, we'll call it post-traumatic stress response, as opposed to disorder or, something like that. But certainly that's what I was experiencing. And part of what was going on for me there was also this feeling of how could I even go back into this work and that I love? And also how could I even ever have a baby again? Like, all of those things that come up so often for women who have had a traumatic birth experience or even just a negative birth experience where you're left feeling like what just happened to me. And really, and I'll say this now and I'll probably say it again, birth is supposed to be, and it can be, this joyous, fantastic, beautiful celebration of life. That's what it's supposed to be. Like we're supposed to want to do this again. So I wasn't there. And I'd had that experience with my previous birth, with my second birth. And so I knew it was possible, which was, I guess, an advantage. At that time, 16 years ago, the concept of like birth trauma or birth processing didn't even exist. At the time was maybe a few years later. I'll tell you a little bit. My fourth birth came as a bit of a surprise. Some knew better than me what I needed, and that whole experience was very healing for me. Or the birth itself was very healing for me. I had amazing luck of being supported by Chava Meira Ben-Zion, who used to be here and is now in California doing amazing things. Anyway, and she really helped me through this like processing, being ready to have a baby again, to like have a positive birth. And after that birth, when I was, which was a really, really incredible experience, when I started to think, okay, I can tell people that I'm a doula again. Like when people would ask me, what do you do? When we were living up north, and a lot of turnaround of new people. So meeting people, going to meals together, whatever. And, so what do you do? And up until that point, I hadn't even been able to say, I'm a mom, like I'm a stay-at-home mom. Like I couldn't even say I'm a doula for almost 2 years. And so I started kind of saying, like, I'm a doula. I haven't really, I'm still postpartum, but I'm a doula. And what happened was that people started like launching, became a trigger for people to launch into their birth stories. Like, oh, you're a doula? oh my goodness, you should hear what happened to me. You should hear what happened to my daughter. You should hear what happened to my wife. And these stories just kept like coming at me. And again, nobody was talking about birth trauma. Nobody was talking about birth healing. Pam England had just released her processing course, this like birth story medicine concept, but nobody had even heard about it yet. Like I only heard about it when I started talking about birthing our stories. And so it was kind of in the consciousness, the collective consciousness that our birth stories needed some healing space. And like I was, I guess, in a prime situation to be able to do something about that. And I remember coming home one day from the playground from like maybe, the 10th person who launched into their, horrific birth story. And I just would listen because you're in the playground or at the grocery store. I'm not going to like ask you questions or, sit down with you or even give you a hug necessarily. Like it wasn't the environment. And I remember sitting down in the living room and saying to my husband, these stories need space. I had the blessing of having a healing experience afterwards, but not everybody is going to have like a subsequent birth is not necessarily going to be a healing experience. It can actually even be worse, especially if you don't go through some of the processing before that. And there's this drive almost to have another birth, thinking that will be the healing. Mm-hmm. And there was like so much coming at me at that time. And I was like, somebody needs to do something for these women. I want to create a space for women to tell their stories. I want to be able to ask them questions. I want to be able to use my experience and my knowledge, of attending births for at that point, 4 or 5 years, even with my break, that I could help them see, help them like put their process into perspective and have some healing. And I remember like talking this out. Yoram was my sounding board, my husband, and I decided that I wanted to do a small, like intimate group of women, not one-on-one. I can talk about a little bit why later, and give the opportunity, like over time, for women to tell their stories and be heard by each other, and to like go through a process of healing together. And I put it out there again. We had no words for it. Now it's like, oh, birth processing. Oh, there's all these methods. At that time, there wasn't. I was like, who wants to come and try this thing? You had negative feelings after your birth. Like I had to make something up, and people came. I ran in that first time, just in person. I ran 3 groups, 2 of them in Hebrew. I was really proud of myself. And then from there, it grew. So for the past, like, I'd say 14 years, I've been running these Birthing Our Stories workshops, also now one-on-one. I've trained doulas to do this process with other women. And it's like the responses are the most amazing thing. Like the responses of, I was able to go on to have another baby, and I felt so good about it. And, I was able to listen to my friend's birth story and help her. I was even like using these skills with their children. My son had fallen off a bike and he was afraid to get back on his bike. And I was able to use the skills that I learned in Birthing Our Stories to help him get back on the bike. Like it was incredible. Yeah. So that's the story of Birthing Our Stories.
Yeah. So tell us why you moved from group work to one-on-one work. Like what's the thinking behind both types?
I do both. I prefer the workshop. The workshop is magic. You get 3 to 4 women in a group over the course of 5 to 6 weeks. And there is something magical about being about the group dynamic, about hearing each other. There's something very isolating about birth trauma. No matter how often you read about it, women think I'm the only one who felt that, how come everybody else has positive births? How come everyone else can just have an easy birth? And I had to have this horrible experience. And this goes across the board. That's another amazing benefit of the group, is that I don't screen the group. I'm not going to do a birth processing for women who are planning a VBAC and ended up having a repeat C-section, or women who are planning a home birth and ended up transferring. I don't do that. So what ends up happening is these 3 or 4 women, even just 3 or 4, you end up having a huge range of backgrounds, a huge range of experiences and plans. And you've got the woman who ended up giving birth, in the elevator, and the woman who planned a home birth, and the woman who had, an emergency repeat C-section. And the three of them are listening to each other and finding that common ground. That is one of the most amazing places where the magic happens. But that's one of the things that divides us so much. So I had a woman who had almost a 4th-degree tear in her birth, and she was so afraid to have another birth. And one of the things that we talked about was, the healing that can come from a positive, like we talked about all of the pelvic floor work and all the things that she could do to heal her body and her pelvic floor and her perineum and all of that. And we also talked about the healing of an elective C-section. And we talked there's no agenda. I'm not here to make people, I will talk about the system and how it works and what it does to us, but we're here to heal and to move forward in a positive way. And she had a beautiful, healing, gentle, C-section in her second birth. And then she was able to have another vaginal birth after that. And that was just one story. But her listening to the woman who I was, coaching through her home birth, where the midwife ended up being really forceful and, it wasn't, they all heard each other and they found that they have so much in common and there's so much sisterhood that could be grown from there. So that's the group. And there's so much more to it even. And that's the magic of that. But there are a few different reasons that I do one-on-one. And first of all, in the group, we don't have pregnant women. That's a no. So if you're pregnant and you're like, okay, I realize that I'm still carrying stuff from my previous birth, but I want to go forward and, in a positive way and not repeat those mistakes or not be triggered or whatever. So then we'll do Birthing Our Stories one-on-one. And then there are a few other situations where I might do one-on-one, and also the woman's preference.
Yeah. So this was born out of your experience and your work as a doula, but do you have any kind of mental health therapy background or not really? I'm full on both, just curious where the skills came from for you to craft the format of the workshop. Where did that come from?
So really I based it on doula work. And it isn't therapy. It's really that same holding space for the woman and her story, listening. One of the things that I do is bring perspective. So that's why I won't train women to do Birthing Our Stories who don't attend births. There are other things that I can train them to do to help with healing and birth processing. But Birthing Our Stories, if you've not attended births and seen women in all kinds of situations going through this process and sort of noticing the patterns that come up in, different women and different birthing environments. And then there's a limit to what you can bring to the table for women who are coming with their birth stories. And that's why actually I've had women who came to me after years of therapy for their birth experience, and Birthing Our Stories was that missing piece that allowed them to process the story, the birth story part, as opposed to the traumatic part.
Yeah. And that was part of my question, which is what's the difference, right? Between therapy for going through a traumatic event, no matter what it is, and the Birthing Our Stories format.
The main difference is that a traumatic event in general is something you never want to repeat. And part of the therapy is being prepared to handle it if it comes up again, a terrible car crash, an assault, or whatever, God forbid, right? You never want to be in that situation again. You're processing the triggers that brought up, and you're coming back to a place where you can live you can function in your life without fearing that this terrible thing isn't going to happen again. Birth is something you want to do again. And not only that, even women have come to Birthing Our Stories 17 years after their last birth. I had a woman who came to me 17 years after her last birth. She was not having any more babies, but she didn't want to pass that on to her daughter. Those fears, those traumas that we carry with us, and it goes into our conversations, and it goes into how we treat other women who are pregnant or who are planning births. And so even that, has a benefit of having healing for it. So it's something that we encounter on a regular basis, and it's something that's not supposed to be traumatic. It's supposed to be joyful, and it's supposed to be something that you want to celebrate and pass on and be together with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting and powerful. It's not quite the same thing, but one thing you said reminded me of my work as a lactation consultant, because you said that every woman who's gone through a traumatic birth experience feels like she's the only one. who has gone through this traumatic birth experience. And when women struggle to breastfeed or are not able to breastfeed, or their baby will refuse to latch, or they don't produce enough milk for whatever medical reason, they feel so alone. They feel like they are the only person of anyone they've ever met who have gone through this experience. It's so isolating, and that's part of what makes it so hard.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so clear to you as a lactation consultant, having seen all of these experiences, to be able to bring that to a woman who's feeling so isolated and say, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the beauties about, like, the beautiful, healing aspects of this group, is that you look around and you're like, I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Not the only one, and it's not your own fault. Those are the two most important messages.
Absolutely.
Right. It's not your fault. Circumstances are not things that you can control.
Right. Even though we do talk about, I don't know if maybe this is not a podcast version topic, but we do talk about responsibility in birthing our stories. Because if we can't take responsibility for our experiences, and it's different than blame, and it's different than shame, and it's a completely different thing. But we can't take responsibility for our choices, for our results, then we can't move forward. So it's not blaming yourself. It's not feeling ashamed of your decisions or whatever. But like, when you put your story into the perspective of, these choices led to these circumstances, led to these events, and it's really not self-blame. Like, it's hard to convey that in a very short amount of time, because a lot of women who probably are hearing this are going, how can you say that? I promise you, there is a way to grow into that, to understanding that responsibility, and to taking that as part of healing.
Yeah, that sounds really profound.
Yeah.
What's some advice you would give just any pregnant woman listening right now to preparing for their birth experience, with all of your experience as a, birth story facilitator in mind?
I have a graphic actually that talks about like a trauma response, meaning an event versus your experience of the event, are two different things. Right? Two different people can have, or even the same person can experience the same event and feel traumatized by it, or not feel traumatized by it. And the difference, from my experience, from reading about trauma in general, but like from everything I've learned, the difference between coming out of an event having a traumatic response versus not, is whether or not you felt powerful.
Okay.
And I was able to kind of construct, again, from my experience, what are the components of feeling powerful or powerless. And when you have these three components, or at least two of them, even if the event that you experience, the birth itself, is complicated or unexpected, or has a negative outcome or a difficult outcome, you will have been in your power and walk away with a powerful and positive experience. I'll give you a very extreme example. I had a woman who had to terminate a pregnancy, and it was her first birth had been a C-section, and she had been looking forward in this pregnancy. She had actually done birthing our stories with me after the previous birth, and she'd been looking forward to a VBAC, to like having this positive experience. And then this happened, and it was a relatively late termination, like in the 20 weeks time. So it was a birth, that she was going into. And she called me, we talked about it. I supported her through this process, and she did give birth vaginally, and it was a positive experience. I feel like that was the most extreme example that I can give, that I experienced in my 14 years of doing this work. But like, she came out, that was a positive experience for her, a powerful experience. And it really has to do with these three aspects, which are voice, choice, and support. This is the power diagram, I call it, or the pillars of power. I talk about birth preparation. This is my focus. And when I talk about, and when I do birth processing, these are, you won't necessarily hear me say like, oh, that's where you didn't have choice, or that's where, but that's like my framework that I'm working off of when I'm listening to a story, is like, where was your voice suppressed? Where were you not given a choice? Where were the pitfalls in the support team? And support is your birth team, your environment, the people who you didn't choose who are involved in your birth, like that's all support. And the people, even books and websites can be support. And so I've seen that when you have any two of these, you're good. You're still good. But if you're missing more than one in your birth experience, then that really does lead to a sense of powerlessness. So these are the things to focus on. I actually wrote a little ebook also that I can send you a link to. For the listeners. It's called The Powerful Woman's Guide to a Great Birth. And it talks about these things.
Yeah. So voice and choice, you're good. Voice and support, you're good. Support and choice, you're good. But if you lose more than two of these three, voice, choice, and support, that's where the trauma comes in.
That's where from a sense of feeling power, having your power taken away.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons that I really don't like the word empower. I don't like that word.
I also
nobody
gives
you power.
It's passive, right? Empowered means power was given externally. It rubs me the wrong way for that reason as well.
Yeah, exactly. So this is reclaim your power, your own power. It's in you. And these are the things that you can focus on that will help you to bring those things into your birth experience and to birth in your power. And again, that's not, that there is no one single birth process that is more powerful than another. It's how you feel.
Yeah.
That it was your choices, that it was, that you were listened to. Voice, like, and that the people around you in your environment supported what you wanted and wasn't trying to, again, suppress you. So they all kind of flow into each other as well. But these are the three things that can also be red flags to you. That if you're feeling a resistance in any of these pillars, as you go through your prenatal care, or even when you walk into a birth environment, like whether you're planning to birth at home or you're birthing in the hospital, or even in an elective C-section. Another woman who I supported years ago, she knew, we can stop the share now. She knew that she was having another C-section. That was her plan. And it's funny that we keep going back to that, but I think it's important because I feel like it's almost like there's something a little bit I love that, a home birth or a natural unmedicated birth or whatever can be, a positive experience. But I don't know that everybody realizes that there's a range and that sometimes a C-section is necessary, much more rarely than they tell us, but it can be necessary. And I feel like that's something that's limiting to a lot of women in birth process. It's like, well, I know I'm going to just have to have a C-section again, so why should I bother? And really, like, one of the things that she was expressing was how much like a piece of meat she felt, and this is a birth. And so we made a birth plan for her C-section where she went in and she told them, this is my birth. I want you to treat me like I'm giving birth. I choose the music. Don't talk about anything that's not related to my birth. Like, don't talk amongst yourselves. And it was this and she was able to have a positive experience. And, and on the other side of the spectrum too, just because you're planning a home birth or an unmedicated birth doesn't mean that everybody in your environment is going to be as supportive as you expect them to be. And so we have to be in our power.
Yeah. That's the soundbite, right? That's the advice for a pregnant woman. Like, feel that you are in your power, be in the choices along with the flexibility of knowing that birth is unexpected, but let it be on your terms. Yeah.
Yes. Within your power. And when you don't know, reach out for support, reach out for help. When when you're feeling resistance to something that's come up in your birth experience, reach out for help. Say, wait, stop. I need help here. And there's never a moment, almost never a moment where you can't say to whoever is in front of you, whether it's the doctors and nurses, whether it's the midwife, whether it's whoever, please leave the room for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I need a moment.
There was someone else on this show, and I wish I could remember who, was at one of my earlier interviews, who said that she says to the hospital staff, thank you for your recommendation. Can we please have 5 minutes? She said there's almost no emergency. There's almost no time that anyone has said, no, you don't get the luxury of those 5 minutes. This must be done now. It's not actually the way it works. And almost always they're happy to say, oh yeah, sure, we'll come back in 5 minutes. And then you can have a reasonable discussion, wife and husband and maybe doula, they want her part of the discussion. And then again, whatever the choice is, even if it's yes, we agree with the hospital recommendations, in their power.
Yeah. Yeah. Also have an infographic about that I can send you, which is like the power questions that are it's just 2 questions that will dig down and bring the power back to you when the environment is trying to like push you in one direction or another. But yeah, it's exactly that. Like, and sometimes just another little tip about that is that often when you say, okay, we need 5 minutes, they stand there like, yeah, you can have 5 minutes. So you may need to tell them, can you leave? Come back in 5 minutes. Thank you. And that's your right also to tell them to leave.
Yeah, go on.
No. And that goes for, I'm saying that goes for home birth too. Like, you could have kind of your team and you could feel a little like choked by all the love and all the wonderful, give me 5 minutes, guys, go outside, come back in 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ayelet, because this was such an new, enriching conversation. And I know it's really going to help guide a lot of people forward towards their birth in a stronger way.
I hope so.
Are you a doula, midwife, lactation consultant, or other type of birth helper? Doulas Israel is the platform where clients find you. Stop fussing with websites. Your profile page on Doulas Israel houses all the information your client needs to know before they reach out to you. Make helping women simpler with a Doulas Israel membership. Growing Happy Babies is the code that gets you 5% off of the annual pro membership. Check out the full directory for every interview we've done up until now, housed at my website, growinghappybabies.com. You can search by profession, location in Israel, or name to choose exactly which birth supporter you need for your journey into motherhood. Whether you are hoping to get pregnant, waiting for your baby to arrive, or already holding your baby in your arms, reach out with any questions. I'm here for you. Until next time.